It is such a beautiful day that I decided to bring the reading outside next to my favorite place to be, near the water. Now I'm going to warn you, we have all kinds of animals around here. We have seen river otter. We have a goose that keeps coming up here. We've named him Fred. There are also two other geese that like to come over and visit, as well as squirrels, lots of different kinds of birds, including eagles, which I think is pretty cool. Anyway, so I'm just letting you know, you're probably going to hear a variety of sounds and you may see some things happening behind me, but I'm just going to keep reading. And in fact, I hear an airplane right now going over. It's okay. It's a beautiful day and we're just going to enjoy this. Last time we read chapter 5 and we found out that there's a problem. We know what the problem is. The first big problem that we've come to in this story, and that is the Newcombs are not very clean people. They don't tidy up after themselves. They don't clean up after themselves. The place is becoming trashy. There's trash everywhere. They leave food around. The problem with that is, especially in a country house, that's going to invite mice. Mice are going to come in, and guess what? That's exactly what is happening. So that's troubling to the littles, but why? Why would that be a big deal for them? Do you remember? Mice are dangerous for them because mice can be harmful to them. And so Father Little went to go get the box of weapons out so that they could defend themselves. But they're hoping that they won't have to do that. They're hoping that the Newcombs will leave so much food around that the mice won't care about attacking them. They're also hoping that the Newcombs will become aware that they have mice and that they will set some traps. Let's move on to chapter 6. Every night for a week, Mr. Little and Tom watched the Newcombs at dinner time. Mr. Little wanted to find out if the Newcombs had seen the mice and what, if anything, they were going to do to get rid of them. Tom and his father hid high above the dinner table in a secret lookout place near the ceiling light. They could see everything that went on in the room. Below them, the Newcombs were finishing their dinner. "I saw a hummingbird outside the study window today," said Mrs. Newcomb. "It was feeding on the iris." Does anybody know what an iris is? That's right, it's a type of flower. Nice. "Marvelous," said Mr. Newcomb. "Would you mind passing the butter? That's a rare thing to see, you know. They're so tiny and timid." "And fast," said Mrs. Newcomb. "I moved closer to the window for a better look, and it was gone in a flash." Mr. Newcomb sipped his coffee. "Dear, don't you think that this coffee is a bit weak again?" Mrs. Newcomb nodded. "What's the bird that sounds like a rusty iron gate?" she asked. Above them, the Littles listened. The Newcombs talked about many things, but as usual, neither one said anything about the mice. "Let's go," said Mr. Little to Tom. They haven't seen the mice. So here you can see them in the light. Do you see them? Father and son climbed out of the lookout place. They walked across the ceiling between the rafters. Both were armed. Tom was carrying a bow and a quiver full of arrows. Mr. Little had a sword. He was carrying a lighted candle. And here you can see them. There they go, making their way across. "What can we do?" said Tom. "The Newcombs see birds everywhere outside the house, but inside where the mice are, they never see anything. Are they blind or something?" Mr. Little sighed. "I don't know," he said. "Mice are quick animals. They're not easy to see, and they usually do most of their work when people are not around." "Hey, I have an idea," said Tom Little. "I know how we can get them to see the mice." "How?" asked his father. "It's easy. We can—" Just then, Tom's father stopped. Tom, following close behind, bumped into him. The candle fell from Mr. Little's hand and went out. Mr. Little reached for his sword. Okay, now let's think about this. Tom's father stopped suddenly, and he stopped so fast that Tom bumps into him, causing Mr. Little to drop the candle. And he reaches for his sword. What do you think is the reason why? "Is it a mouse?" whispered Tom. "Shh!" Quietly, Tom took an arrow and fitted it to the bowstring. There was a scratching noise in the wall ahead. Mr. Little and Tom stood still and tried to see into the blackness. They listened. When Mr. Little had heard enough to know it was a mouse, he whispered to Tom, "I'll stand here. You hide behind that heating pipe. As soon as the mouse reaches the top of the wall, I'll light a match." He took a deep breath. "If he runs to attack me, shoot him with your bow and arrow. Don't shoot unless he attacks. The light may frighten him away." "What if I miss?" asked Tom. "I have the sword," said Mr. Little. "The mouse will have to get awfully close for you to use the sword," said Tom. "That's why you'd better not miss with the arrow," said Mr. Little. "Now go." Tom Little felt his way through the dark ceiling space to the pipe. He drew the arrow across the bow and pulled the string back with all his might. Then he aimed into the darkness toward the sound of the scratching. The noise grew louder and louder. From the sound of it, Tom thought the mouse was climbing near the Littles' tin can elevator. He hoped the mouse hadn't gnawed through the string. The boy had never seen a mouse. He had, of course, heard many scary stories about them. He was ready for something terrible. Suddenly, there was a burst of blinding white light. His father's match. Shadows danced. Tom Little blinked. Then he saw the mouse. It was climbing up over the edge of the wall. Its eyes were like black mirrors, shining back the light of the match. Tom forgot what his father had told him. He didn't wait for the mouse to attack. Instead, as soon as he saw the beast, he shot the arrow. It flew through the air and struck the mouse in the foreleg. The mouse squealed. So Tom did not do what his father asked him. His father had told him if the mouse attacks, then shoot him with the bow and arrow. But Tom got scared. And I know that's happened to me before. When I get scared, I don't always make the best choices. Has that happened to you? "Nuts!" yelled Tom. "I forgot!" He shot another arrow. By that time, the mouse had climbed over the wall. As it struggled to its feet, the second arrow hit it in the rump. It squealed louder. The arrows didn't stop the mouse. It crawled toward the light. A low, snarling growl came from deep in its throat. Mr. Little stood his ground in the middle of the ceiling space, 4 feet away from the oncoming mouse. In one hand, he held the sword at arm's length, pointed at the mouse. In the other, he held the burning match high over his head like a torch. Then he lowered the match torch and pointed it at the mouse. Suddenly, the mouse turned and limped away. Oh my, so much action already, and this is just one mouse. What do you think is going to happen next? Come back next time for Chapter 7, when we'll learn some more about what's happening. Bye.